The massive doors of the detention facility slid open with a heavy metallic groan. General Dax's footsteps echoed through the corridor, each step making the metal floor vibrate under his enormous weight. His green-scaled skin gleamed under the harsh white lights, and the metals on his chest clinked together as he walked. Behind him, a group of nervous officers struggled to keep up with his long strides. "Show me the new prisoners," he commanded, his deep voice bouncing off the walls. "I want to see what sorry specimens our patrols caught this time." The detention facility sat on planet Crucible, a world famous for its crushing gravity and thick atmosphere. The stellar Dominion had chosen this planet specifically because its harsh conditions weakened most species, making it the perfect place to break the spirit of captured warriors. Officer Reed, a thin alien with blue skin and 4 arms, quickly tapped on his datapad. "Yes, General. We captured 15 warriors from 7 different species during our last raid. They're being held in Block C." General Dax's yellow eyes narrowed as they approached the holding cells. Through the energy barriers, he could see the prisoners. Most were impressive specimens. There was a rock-skinned warrior from the granite plains of Tekar, 3 scaled fighters from the warrior clans of the Midnight Nebula, and even a rare crystal being from the Diamond Worlds. The general walked slowly past each cell, studying the prisoners. Some glared back at him defiantly, while others cowered in the corners of their cells. The high gravity of planet Crucible was already affecting them. Even the strongest among them moved slowly, their bodies fighting against the increased weight of their own limbs. "Pathetic," General Dax muttered, watching a muscular prisoner struggle to stand. "They look strong, but none of them have real warrior spirit. Break them quickly and add them to the labor camps." That's when Officer Reed cleared his throat nervously. "There's one more prisoner, General. We're not quite sure what to make of this one." The general followed Officer Reed to the last cell. When he looked inside, he had to stop himself from laughing out loud. The prisoner inside was smaller than all the others, with no obvious defensive features at all. No armor plates, no claws, no extra limbs, just soft-looking pink skin and a simple prison uniform. The prisoner sat quietly in a corner, appearing completely ordinary. "What is this?" General Dax roared with laughter, turning to his officers. "Did someone accidentally capture a maintenance drone's pet? This is the weakest excuse for a warrior I've ever seen." The other officers joined in the laughter, though Officer Reed remained unusually quiet. The prisoner in the cell didn't react to their mockery, just watched them with calm, observant eyes. "Put this one in the lowest security section," General Dax ordered, wiping tears of amusement from his eyes. "It's barely worth the energy to keep the cell barrier running. Probably some civilian who got mixed up in the raid by mistake." As the inspection group turned to leave, Officer Reed glanced at his datapad one last time. His eyes widened slightly as he read the species designation, and his hands began to tremble. But before he could say anything, General Dax was already striding away, still chuckling about the weak prisoner. The being in the cell remained silent, watching them go. Despite the crushing gravity of planet Crucible, its posture remained perfectly straight, and in its eyes there was something that none of the officers had noticed. Not fear, not despair, but patience. The patience of a species that had evolved to outlast every challenge it had ever faced. A species called human. 3 days had passed since the initial inspection, and General Dax couldn't get the strange prisoner out of his mind. Something about the creature's calm demeanor bothered him. Most prisoners showed fear, anger, or despair, but this one showed nothing but quiet observation. "Bring me everything we know about the small one," he ordered Officer Reed during their morning briefing. The blue-skinned officer's 4 hands moved quickly across multiple datapads. "The prisoner calls himself Tom," Officer Reed reported. "He was captured during the raid on Trading Station 7, where our forces found him fighting alongside the station's defenders." General Dax frowned. "Fighting? That weak thing." He stood up from his massive command chair, making the floor creak under his weight. "Show me the combat footage." The holographic display flickered to life, showing scenes from the raid. The general's eyes widened as he watched the small prisoner move through the battle. While the other defenders tried to match the Dominion soldiers' strength, Tom used the station's architecture to his advantage. He was never where the soldiers expected, appearing from vents and maintenance tunnels, striking quickly and vanishing again. Interesting tactics for a weak species, General Dax muttered. But tricks and hiding spots won't help him here on Crucible. He turned to his officers. Move him to the main holding area with the other prisoners. Let's see how he handles himself there. The transfer happened during the facility's designated rest period. 2 guards moved Tom from his isolated cell to the large common area where the other prisoners were kept. The space was designed to force interaction, with nowhere to hide and constant observation. The other prisoners took notice immediately. The rock-skinned warrior from Tecker, nearly 3 times Tom's size, approached first. His heavy footsteps shook the floor as he walked, each step a struggle against Crucible's intense gravity. "Look what they sent us." The warrior rumbled, his voice like grinding stones. "A soft thing that will break in the first hour." The other prisoners gathered around, forming a circle of towering aliens all staring down at the human. Tom stood quietly in the center, his posture relaxed despite being surrounded by creatures that could easily tear him apart. The rock warrior reached out with one massive hand, probably intending to lift Tom off the ground. But Tom wasn't there anymore. He had stepped aside with such casual ease that it took everyone a moment to realize what had happened. The rock warrior stumbled, thrown off balance by his own momentum and the heavy gravity. Before he could recover, Tom was behind him, speaking in a calm, clear voice. "I think we'd all rather rest than fight," he said. "This gravity is tiring enough without adding unnecessary exercise." The way he said it, not a threat, not a boast, just a simple statement, made several prisoners step back. The rock warrior turned, his crystalline eyes glinting with anger, but also confusion. How had this small creature moved so easily in Crucible's crushing gravity? In the observation room, General Dax watched the scene with growing irritation. "It's just using those same tricks from the station," he growled. "Put him in the work rotation tomorrow. Let's see how well he dodges when he's carrying heavy loads in our gravity." Officer Reed hesitated before speaking. "Sir, there's something about his species designation that you should know." "Enough." General Dax slammed one massive fist on the control panel. "I don't care what species it is. Tomorrow, we'll see what it's really made of. No more tricks, no more games. Just pure physical labor under Crucible's full gravity." As the general stormed out, Officer Reed looked back at the monitor. Tom was now sitting quietly in a corner, but his eyes were fixed on the observation room's camera. And despite everything, he was smiling slightly. The real test was about to begin. The morning alarm blared through the prison facility, its deep tone vibrating the metal walls. As prisoners lined up for their work assignments, Officer Reed paced nervously in the control room. He had spent the entire night reviewing old military records, and what he found had kept him awake. "General Dax." Reed called out, hurrying down the corridor with all 4 arms clutching data pads. "Sir, please, you need to see this before we start today's work rotation." The general turned slowly, his massive frame blocking the corridor's light. "What is it now, Reed?" "More concerns about your favorite little prisoner." "Sir, I've confirmed the species designation." Reed's voice shook slightly. "The prisoner. He's a human." For a moment, the general's face showed no reaction. Then he burst out laughing, the sound echoing through the hallway. "A human. Those legendary creatures that make young officers check under their bunks at night." He shook his head, still chuckling. "Don't tell me you believe those old stories." But Reed persisted, holding up one of his data pads. "Sir, please look at these records. 3 decades ago, a human prisoner in the Rigel detention facility survived conditions that killed 6 other species. Before that, on Mining Colony 9, a single human worker outlasted an entire crew of enhanced laborers. And there's more." "Enough." General Dax snatched the datapad and tossed it aside. I don't need stories and legends. I need workers who can handle Crucible's gravity. Now, let's see how your precious human does with real work. In the prison yard, Tom stood with the other prisoners as guard drones assigned their tasks. The morning sun beat down mercilessly, its heat amplified by Crucible's dense atmosphere. Even standing still was an effort in the crushing gravity. The rock warrior from yesterday watched Tom with wary eyes. "You moved well last night, soft one," he rumbled. "But tricks won't help you carry heavy loads." Tom just nodded politely. "We'll see how the day goes." A guard drone hovered over to their group. "Section 12 needs clearing. Transport all debris to the processing center." The drone projected a map showing a field of broken machinery and metal scraps, each piece weighing significantly more than usual in Crucible's gravity. As the prisoners spread out to begin work, Officer Reed watched from the observation tower. His top hands gripped the railing while his lower ones fidgeted with another datapad. "General, there's one more thing you should know about humans." "What now?" General Dax asked, irritation clear in his voice. "Their home planet. It's mostly covered in water, but they evolved as persistence hunters on the dry parts. They would chase prey until it collapsed from exhaustion. Their bodies," Reed swallowed hard, "their bodies are optimized for endurance, not immediate strength." The general waved dismissively. "Wonderful. So our little human is good at walking. That won't help much with." He stopped mid-sentence, staring at the yard below. While other prisoners struggled to drag or carry single pieces of debris, Tom had developed a system. He'd moved smaller pieces first, creating a path through the field. Now he was using leverage and carefully planned movements to roll larger pieces along this path, conserving energy while maintaining a steady pace. "It's not just about walking, sir," Reed said quietly. "They can regulate their body temperature better than almost any species we know. They heal quickly from muscle strain. And most importantly," he looked down at his datapad again, "they get stronger when faced with harsh conditions. Their bodies adapt." General Dax's expression darkened as he watched Tom continue his methodical work. The human hadn't stopped once, hadn't even slowed down, while other prisoners were already taking rest breaks. "Well then," the general said, his voice low and dangerous, "let's see just how much this human can adapt. Double his workload." But as the guards moved to adjust the assignments, Tom looked up at the observation tower and gave a small nod, as if he'd been expecting this all along. The afternoon sun hung like a burning stone in Crucible's thick atmosphere. 3 days had passed since Tom's workload had been doubled, and General Dax's frustration had grown with each report. Not only had the human maintained his pace, but he seemed to be moving more easily now, as if he was getting used to the crushing gravity. "This ends today," General Dax announced to his officers. "Prepare the gauntlet." Officer Reed's blue skin turned a pale shade of gray. "The gauntlet? Sir, we haven't used that since the incident with the Crystal Warriors. 3 of them died. Then we'll finally see what breaks this human." The general's yellow eyes gleamed. "Bring all prisoners to the arena. They should witness this." The gauntlet was a massive obstacle course designed to test the limits of any species. Under Crucible's heavy gravity, every challenge became nearly impossible. Metal poles that needed climbing felt like magnetic columns pulling you down. Gaps that needed jumping seemed to yawn like endless chasms. Even the strongest prisoners avoided looking at it. Tom stood calmly as guards explained the rules. Complete the course or face severe punishment. No time limit, but no rest breaks either. The other prisoners watched from behind energy barriers, the rock warrior shaking his crystalline head sadly. "Begin." General Dax's voice boomed through the speakers. Tom approached the first obstacle, a series of high walls that needed climbing. Other prisoners had tried using brute strength here and failed. But Tom studied the walls for a moment, then began moving in an efficient pattern, using minimum force, letting momentum help where possible. He wasn't fast, but he was steady. Interesting technique. One of the officers muttered, "But wait until he reaches the hanging bars." The hanging bars were simple in theory. Cross a gap by swinging from bar to bar. But in Crucible's gravity, each bar threatened to tear arms from sockets. Previous prisoners had fallen here, their muscles giving out. They watched Tom approach, expecting the same. But Tom did something different. Between each swing, he paused briefly, shaking out his arms, letting his muscles recover. The breaks were short, just a few seconds, but they made a difference. He kept moving, bar after bar, while sweat poured down his face. "Impossible," General Dax growled. "No one maintains this kind of endurance. Activate the heat units." The arena's temperature began to rise. Most species would struggle now, their bodies unable to cope with both the gravity and the heat. But Tom's body was doing something they didn't expect. It was sweating more, using the moisture to cool itself. "Sir," Reed reported, checking his instruments, "his body temperature is remaining stable. Humans, they evolved this cooling system. They can maintain it for hours." The general slammed his fist on the control panel. "Then flood the lower sections. Let's see how well he handles the weight of water in this gravity." Water began filling the final part of the course. Under Crucible's pull, it was like trying to move through liquid metal. Previous prisoners had needed rescue here, their strength totally drained. They watched Tom wade into the water. And then they saw something extraordinary. Tom wasn't fighting the water's weight directly. He was moving with it, using small, efficient movements, keeping his head above water while letting his body find the path of least resistance. "Sir," Reed's voice was barely a whisper now. "The records mention that humans evolved from plains hunters. But before that they were adapted for moving through water. Their bodies remember." In the arena below, Tom continued his steady progress. He wasn't breaking any speed records. He wasn't showing any amazing feats of strength. He was simply continuing, enduring, moving forward step by step, while species far stronger had given up. And on his face was the same expression he'd worn since the beginning. Not determination, not anger, not even pride. Just the patient look of a being whose entire evolutionary history had prepared it for exactly this kind of challenge. General Dax stood in the medical bay, staring at the screens displaying Tom's vital signs. It had been 2 hours since the human had completed the gauntlet, and what the monitors showed made no sense. Instead of showing exhaustion or damage, Tom's body was already recovering, adapting, growing stronger. "Explain this," the general demanded, pointing at the readings. "No species recovers this quickly." The facility's chief medical officer, Dr. Vix, adjusted her optical enhancers. Her tentacles moved across multiple screens as she analyzed the data. "It's fascinating, sir. The human's muscle fibers are actually rebuilding themselves stronger than before. They're adapting to Crucible's gravity." "That's impossible," General Dax growled. "The gravity here cripples most species." "Look at this historical data," Dr. Vix continued, bringing up new images. "Humans evolved on a planet where they had to adapt constantly. They lived in deserts, frozen wastelands, dense jungles, and high mountains. Their bodies learned to adjust to any environment. In the recovery chamber, Tom was already sitting up, doing simple stretching exercises. Through the observation window, the other prisoners watched with a mixture of fear and respect. The rock warrior had pressed one crystalline hand against the glass, his expression unreadable. "There's more," Officer Reed added, entering the medical bay with a stack of data pads. "I found records of human physical achievements. They have something called ultramarathons, where they run for days without stopping. They have survival experts who live in the most extreme conditions. Some can hold their breath underwater for incredible lengths of time." General Dax's scales darkened with anger. "So they're good at suffering. That doesn't make them strong." "Sir," Dr. Vix interrupted, her tentacles trembling with excitement, "you don't understand. The human isn't just enduring these conditions, he's thriving in them. Look at these muscle density readings. The heavy gravity isn't breaking him down, it's making him stronger. In a few more days, he might be better adapted to Crucible than our own guards. The medical bay's screen showed more data. Enhanced bone density, improved oxygen efficiency, increased muscle fiber count. Tom's body wasn't just recovering, it was rebuilding itself specifically for Crucible's harsh environment. Impossible, the general whispered, but there was a note of uncertainty in his voice now. No, logical, Dr. Vix corrected. Humans didn't evolve to be the strongest, fastest, or most naturally armored species. They evolved to adapt, to endure, to keep going when other species would break. And most importantly, she paused, bringing up one final screen. They evolved to get stronger from adversity. In the recovery chamber, Tom stood up and walked to the window. His movements were smooth now, almost graceful under the crushing gravity. The other prisoners stepped back, finally understanding what they were seeing. This wasn't just about physical strength. This was about a species that had spent millions of years preparing for exactly this kind of challenge. General Dax watched the scene, his military mind finally grasping the implications. A species that couldn't be broken by harsh conditions. A species that grew stronger from every challenge. A species that didn't just survive, but adapted and thrived. "Sir," Officer Reed said quietly, "should we perhaps reconsider our approach to human prisoners?" The general didn't answer. He was watching Tom start a new set of exercises, moving with increasing confidence in Crucible's gravity, and for the first time in his military career, General Dax felt something he hadn't experienced in years. A week had passed since the gauntlet, and the atmosphere in the prison facility had changed completely. The guards watched nervously as Tom moved through his daily tasks, his body now fully adjusted to Crucible's crushing gravity. What had once been a struggle was now almost effortless for him. "He's teaching the others," a guard reported to General Dax, "showing them how to move efficiently, how to conserve energy, how to adapt." The general stood at his observation window, watching the prison yard below. The rock warrior who had once threatened Tom was now following his instructions, learning to work with the gravity rather than against it. Even more surprisingly, it was working. The other prisoners were lasting longer, working better. "Shut it down," General Dax ordered. "Put him in isolation." Officer Reed stepped forward, his four hands clutching his ever-present data pads. "Sir, productivity in the workyard has doubled since he started teaching the others. Even the death rate among new prisoners has dropped to almost zero." "That's exactly the problem." The general spun around, his massive frame trembling with rage. "He's changing everything. The system we built here is improving," Reed finished quietly. "Sir, perhaps we should consider." An alarm cut through their conversation. Red lights flashed throughout the facility as warning sirens blared. General Dax rushed to the monitors, his yellow eyes widening at what he saw. In the high-security wing, 3 massive prisoners, members of the warrior species known as the Titans, had broken free during transport. Each stood nearly 4 meters tall, with natural armor and tremendous strength. Even in Crucible's gravity, they were devastating. "All guards to the high-security wing," General Dax roared into the comm system. "Containment protocols." "Sir," Reed interrupted, pointing at another monitor. "Look." Tom had somehow gotten through the workyard's security barriers, not by breaking them, but by finding a maintenance path the guards had forgotten about. He was moving through the facility with purpose, heading straight for the escaped prisoners. "Stop him," General Dax ordered. "He'll be killed." But Tom was already there, facing the 3 escaped Titans. The creatures towered over him, their armored forms making him look tiny in comparison. The guards watched through security cameras, expecting a quick and brutal end. Instead, they saw a demonstration of everything Tom had learned. He moved like water through Crucible's gravity, never trying to match the Titans' strength, but using their own power against them. When they charged, he wasn't there. When they swung, they hit only air. And slowly, methodically, he kept them moving, kept them working against the gravity they hadn't adapted to. "Remarkable," Dr. Vix commented, having hurried to the control room to watch. "He's using their size against them. In this gravity, every movement costs them tremendous energy. But he's barely breathing hard." One by one, the Titans began to slow. Their movements became sluggish, their attacks desperate. Finally, the last one fell to his knees, completely exhausted. Tom had never thrown a single punch. He had simply let Crucible's gravity do the work for him. The entire facility had watched through various monitors and windows. Prisoners, guards, and officers all stood in silence, witnessing something they'd never seen before, a victory through endurance rather than strength. General Dax gripped the edge of his control panel, leaving deep dents in the metal. "How?" he whispered. How did he know exactly what to do? "Because, sir," Reed answered, reading from his datapad. "Humans have a saying from their history. They don't have to be the strongest. They don't have to be the fastest. They just have to be the last one standing." In the high-security wing, Tom was already helping the guards secure the exhausted Titans, moving with the same calm efficiency he'd shown since his first day on Crucible. But now everyone watched him differently, not as a prisoner, but as something they had never encountered before, a being who turned adversity into advantage. The command center buzzed with tension as General Dax paced back and forth. 2 weeks had passed since the Titan incident, and the reports on his desk told a story he couldn't ignore. Prison productivity was at an all-time high. Injury rates had dropped to near zero. And in every corner of the facility, prisoners and guards alike whispered about the human who had changed everything. "Enough," General Dax finally announced. "Bring the human to the combat arena. It's time to settle this personally." Officer Reed's 4 hands trembled as he input the commands. "Sir, is this wise? The human has already proven." "He's proven nothing." The general's roar shook dust from the ceiling. "All he's shown is tricks and patience. Now we'll see how he handles real combat." The arena was Crucible's oldest structure, a circular pit where the gravity felt even heavier than usual. The facility's entire population, prisoners and staff alike, gathered to watch. In the center stood General Dax, his massive frame gleaming under the harsh lights, his natural armor catching the glow of the force field above. Tom entered calmly, walking with the easy grace he'd developed over his weeks on Crucible. He looked almost small next to the general, but no one watching thought of him as weak anymore. "One final test," General Dax announced, his voice echoing through the arena. "Face me in combat. No tricks, no waiting games. Pure combat." Tom nodded once. "As you wish, General. Though I should mention, everything you've seen so far, those weren't tricks. That was just preparation." The general charged forward, his huge fist swinging in an arc that would have shattered stone. But Tom wasn't there anymore. He moved like he'd been born in Crucible's gravity, each step precise and measured. "Stand still and fight," General Dax bellowed, attacking again and again. But his mighty swings found only empty air, each miss costing him more energy under the crushing gravity. "You still don't understand," Tom said, his voice carrying clearly through the arena. "Humans don't fight like this because we're weak. We fight like this because it works. Every failed attack tires you more. Every minute in this gravity drains you faster. While he smiled slightly. "I've been living in this gravity for weeks now. Adapting. Growing stronger." The general's movements were slowing, his breathing becoming labored. His natural armor, so useful in normal combat, now weighed him down even more in Crucible's pull. Meanwhile, Tom's movements remained smooth and efficient. "Impossible," General Dax gasped. "No species adapts this fast." "That's where you're wrong," Tom replied. "Adapting quickly is exactly what humans do best. It's not about being the strongest today. It's about being stronger tomorrow than you were yesterday." The general launched one final desperate attack. This time, Tom didn't dodge. Instead, he stepped forward, using the general's own momentum and the planet's gravity to send the massive alien crashing to the ground. The impact echoed through the arena. General Dax tried to rise but found he couldn't. His body, strained by the gravity and exhausted from the fight, had finally reached its limit. He looked up at Tom with new understanding in his yellow eyes. "How?" he whispered. "How did your species become like this?" Tom offered his hand to the fallen general. "We had to," he answered simply. "Our world didn't give us armor or claws or overwhelming strength. Instead, it gave us endless challenges, so we learned to adapt, to endure, to grow stronger from every challenge we faced." The general took the offered hand and rose slowly to his feet. Around the arena, prisoners and guards watched in stunned silence as the facility's most powerful figure bowed his head to the being he had once laughed at. "I understand now," General Dax said, his voice carrying to every corner of the arena. "Strength isn't just about power. Sometimes it's about never stopping, never breaking, always adapting." Tom nodded. "That's the real story of humanity, General. Not that we're the strongest, but that we never stop getting stronger." And in that moment, on a planet designed to break the strongest warriors in the galaxy, a new legend was born. The legend of the species that turned adversity itself into their greatest weapon.